how do you reconcile that in your mind of, how you're going to shape the next 10 or 20 years of life for your family? Because everything that works to connect the mind, body, and spirit is the opposite of everything the world is telling us to do 24/7. And then the AI revolution is just pouring a massive amount of gas onto that fire. How do we survive that?
Well, first,
what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the MTNTOUGH Podcast. I am Dustin for host and CEO, and I am so glad that you are here. We love seeing you come back to these episodes week after week so that you can live that abundant life as we work on mindset, mental fitness, and mental toughness. Thanks for being here, and thanks for making this one of the top mental toughness shows in the country. Shifting gears now to today's guest, we have a very special episode today. We had him in person in the lab. On the show today, we have Micah Fink. Micah is the founder of Heroes and Horses here in Montana, a former U.S. Navy SEAL. It was a phenomenal day. We had him in the lab for a MTNTOUGH team workout, and then we were able to roll into the podcast studio and record an epic conversation. So stand by for my conversation with Micah Fink. Yeah, that workout was fun. Yeah. It's nice to do those partner ones, just because, your buddy's counting on you, and you just got to wait for him to show back up.
The sleds, dude, were stay moving.
Yeah. That double lap, the first one wasn't bad, and then the second one, you're like, come on.
Yeah, the second one was, it makes you honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are doing quite a bit of training with the guys on the program.
Yeah, so we have a 41-day program. Primarily, it's pretty structured. We kind of first determine guys into groups, where they're at, and then build them up accordingly. So there's kind of prevent injuries and that kind of stuff, and it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Every workout finishes with Fodokster, which is stone carrying, and they carry the stones for 41 days.
That's sweet.
Yeah, and it's we got jiu-jitsu and boxing, mobility, so it's kind of like a mix-up of all kinds of stuff. So it's pretty intense, especially when you're off the mission to the kitchen. It can be a shock to the senses.
Yeah.
But and then of course there's no hot showers or anything like that, and it's cold and you're shivering a lot, and it's really good for the body. It's actually very healing.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, because you guys, when you first started, you started with some Jim Jones workouts out there, didn't you? Those guys.
Yeah, we started with that, and then listen, the program's evolved so much.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. As my life has evolved.
Yeah.
And I look back, initially those days, kind of coming out of, my background, everything was like a beatdown fest. And then for me, it was kind of getting into my 40s, the injury started coming, very racing dirt bikes, blown out knee, horses, blown out knee, rotator cuff boxing. It started breaking down.
Yeah.
And I think it was because for so many years, the load capacity was so intense. I look back at my old training journals and I'm like, that's not even healthy to do that.
The
volume, of power cleans and deadlifts and chains and then running and everything that was involved in that. It was great, through my 30s. And then, you get a little bit older and you step on a banana peel one day at your house and you're getting knee surgery,
You get so banged up, man.
You get really banged up.
Yeah.
And the thing is like, I just think that people didn't know because there was this like, you know, kind of like a fitness craze that kind of like all of a sudden came. It was like CrossFit and all this kind of stuff. And I don't think it was getting people fit, but I don't think it was really making people healthy, you know?
I think you lived through the peak of it too. Like your military days were at the peak of like the creation of Jim Jones and CrossFit at the same time. And you were right smack in the middle of it.
Yeah, they had like a slightly dwarfed child together.
Yeah.
That was like had a huge neck and legs and had some other problems.
In an insane amount of volume.
Yeah, and I actually I did the Ironman and I got into all that kind of stuff and just getting my body, like getting the muscle off that I had during that time was like extremely difficult. And, so now my focus really is like, I really do a lot of kettlebell work, a lot of balance, and I'm actually just getting back into it after being gone for 2 months.
Yeah.
Free diving. But I just really want to think about like, what's life going to look like, at 60 and maintaining like what is optimal for my body. So it's like focusing on optimization, not so much like, and that's a hard mindset because my wife was like, oh my God, every time you like start training again, it's like this like huge load of all this kind of stuff. And 8 weeks later, you're like got an injury, your back or like whatever. It was like, I was boxing, I punched a guy and my rotator cuff just
popped.
Yeah, it was like, and it's just use. It's just heavy use, So I think like the lesson for me was like learning how to heal, like reframing my mindset and thinking about like, optimizing every system that I had, not relying on surgeries or these kind of things, focusing on mobility and kind of like bringing all that stuff together so that at 70 years old, I'm at my mountain bike, going for a run, hunting, doing all the things that I love to do.
Yeah.
And not like beating myself to be like the best at jumping over a box or something.
Yeah.
Which was like a thing, There's
not many boxes I've actually had to jump over.
Right. Yeah.
Longevity is everything, though. I mean, longevity is the key to us being really having that abundant life when we're 50, 60, and 70. I mean, if we can run around with our grandkids and like jump in a river with them and hike a mountain with them, that's a lot different than sitting at home while they're out playing. And training for longevity is a different mindset than training for, conquering the latest championship CrossFit games or something like that. It's a whole different strategy.
Yeah. And like, I mean, even in like the kind of like, operator world, I mean, that actually hurt a lot of guys when you look back. Like a lot of guys were hurt working out. It wasn't actually like, it wasn't like running through the rocks with your kind of, with all your gear on or whatever, you twisted your ankle. It was like max power cleans for time and like you just can't do it, right? Like, and you get hurt, So I think that's a really good point is looking at longevity. And I think like in my life, it's like really focusing on balance. And we get like so heavily balanced on like one thing. And like it could be just like heavily balanced on eating right? But that's only going to get you so far. Like you have to have, it's like the 3-body problem. I don't know if you ever heard of that show, but it actually comes from, it was a Japanese physicist who took Newton's unsolvable math problem, which is you have one gravitational force influenced by 2. And there is no quantifiable mathematical equation that could solve when there's going to be times of chaos and times of stable. So a stable era and a chaotic era. Well, what I really believe, knowing what I know about Newton, is what he was really referring to was the mind, the body, and the spirit. And so you could have a really great, body. But if your mind and your spirit are not aligned, you're going to have eras of chaos. You're going to be in constant conflict with yourself and the outside world, and it works in any way that you mix it up. And I think like bringing those things into alignment and creating absolute balance where those are in like a coherent state.
Yeah.
That's when you begin to actually see your life path for what it is, and that takes real discipline, because often we just do the things that we like to do and we really kind of run away from the things that we don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I always say, I'm like, it's easy for somebody to do something that looks hard to another person because that's what they love doing. Right. Like, but what do they do about something that they absolutely don't want to do?
Yeah.
Like say, I'm really sorry. I fucked up immensely. And, I'm working on myself.
To apologize.
No, I'd rather get up at 4 and run 19 miles, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that people are like, that's so hard. I'm like, but the other thing's actually way harder.
Yeah.
And you can't do that until you're in coherence.
The things that we suck at, we really don't want to do, but they're the things that are most important for us to do.
Yeah. Yeah. We run from them. I mean, I look at like my life when, founding Heroes and Horses and like where I was, I mean, ultimately I was a wreck. Like I can look back now very clearly and see like, man, and how insane life is. I often share the story of how I was completely broke. My marriage is collapsing. I'm paying for Heroes and Horses with all my own money. I have guys coming back. I'm getting ripped off by all these people. I have no idea because I way of the West or whatever. I just didn't know what I know now.
Yeah.
And I'm like in this moment, and it was like my wife's on the porch and she's like, "You love these veterans more than you like love our family," she said to me. And I was like, I don't care. I was like, I'm going to see this thing through to the end, like whatever it is. And I walked out. And I never really was really dealing with my own shit. And I get in the truck, I'm driving to Wyoming, and my buddy calls me up, a Marine. He's like, "Oh, hey, there's this like donor, you know him, and he wants to meet you." And I was like, "Fuck a donor." That's what I said. He's like, "You're running a nonprofit, dude." I was like, "Fuck nonprofits." I said something like very arrogant, right? And I hung up, and I'm driving to Wyoming. I'm going to pack in this thing for National Geographic, and I'm thinking about the conversation, my life. I'm just like spinning out, and I owe $24,500 to this guy, and I got the students coming back. I'm paying for their flights, but I have no money to pay this place because I didn't have a ranch. I didn't have any. I'm leasing everything. So my buddy calls me back. He's like, "Dude, I'm your friend." And I was like, "I know." He's like, "You should come meet this guy." I was like, "I don't want to meet anybody, but I'm not in a good headspace." And he calls me back just before I'm getting off 19th. And he's like begs me, and I'm like, "Okay, fine." So I pull him with the horse trailer, and I go down, I sit, and these guys are out here fishing. And they're like, "So what are you doing with the vets?" And I'm just like, "Oh, I kind of like shared what we were doing." And after like maybe 45 minutes, I was like, "I got to get going, And the gentleman says to me, "Can I come out and pet one of your horses?"
Oh, man.
And I was like, So I go out in the parking lot. I unload this big horse. I had Fritz, big roan giraffe cross. I unload Fritz, and he goes over. He's like, "Oh, hang on, I'm allergic." So he goes and gets a glove out of a plastic bag,
Bro.
and he comes over and he starts petting the horse, and he looks at me, and he says, He goes, "I've been working with charities for 40 years," and he said, "You, son, are the worst nonprofit guy I've ever met." And I was like, I was like, the emotions that came over me, I won't describe, but they weren't good, right? Like, and I stood there and I just like looked at him, and he reaches in his pocket and he pulls a check out for me and he hands it to me. He's like, "Call me when you get back from your horse thing." I was like, "Thanks."
Weird.
So I put the check in my pocket. I load the horse back up. I start driving towards Big Sky, Wyoming, and I pulled a check out. I'd never got a donation like this, and it was for $25,000. I needed $24,500.
Yeah.
And for the first time in a long time, like I started sobbing. Right? I was like, okay.
Almost the exact amount.
I was like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. Like, I'm going to keep going. And, that was really a moment where for the first time in my life, I had thought like, I'm going to see this through, but I can't do this. Like, I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you decide to do something different, the level of psychic attacks and the kind of push against culture and the status quo and the norm and everything that comes along with that, right, is an incredible opportunity to really learn about yourself is what it really is. And initially you're like kind of like the victim of all these things.
Yeah, getting attacked
And you're out there and you're like, vets don't need drugs, and maybe we shouldn't like be getting drunk all the time, and like maybe we should like do and even these like very simple things, people are like,
this guy's crazy,
this guy's insane, and ultimately like through the years there was many different things that began to help me like learn how to heal. Like I look about how we got the ranch where we're currently at. And so kind of as that like period went on, like my marriage fell apart and I moved out, and I was like kind of just like, I guess you could say like in hiding. And there were some really special people in my life that helped me along the way during that time. And I kind of just started like going down. All these guys are getting better. They're like getting healed and like they're getting changed, and they're like, you saved my life, right? And here I am like living in this farmhouse, like doing donuts in my bed, right? Like just hurting, right?
Yeah.
And that fall, I got invited and I went and I did this like sweat lodge, right? And I started all of a sudden pulling myself out, and I started doing like what I knew I needed to do. And I started getting in like really good shape. I started getting very focused, and we were looking for a ranch. And so the house that I was living at, a guy comes pulling up with a hay trailer, and I'm in the gym boxing and feeling really good. And it was like, I'm kind of like on the up curve right now. And he says to me, hey, he comes in, he's like, can you help me unload this hay? I said, yeah, sure. So I kind of take off my stuff, and he's like, you're the Heroes and Horses guy, right? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, you live here? And I was like, it's really, my life's complicated right now, right? So he's like, so he looks at me, he's like, oh, none of my business or whatever. And we get the hay unloaded, and he says, hey, you looking for a ranch? And I said, yeah, like we are. The next day I got on my motorcycle. I drove down to the ranch that is now the Double H Ranch of Heroes and Horses.
Dang.
There was an old man sitting in the cabin. I walked in there and told him all about what we were doing. And he goes, son, do you have any money? And I was like, nah, we don't have any money. He's like, well, I appreciate you coming down. And I'm like, shit. I was like, I'm riding my bike back. I'm like, you couldn't think of anything more clever, like your little clever things. But I just was at a loss.
Yeah.
That November, he calls me back. He's like, hey, why don't you come down to the ranch? I drive back down to the ranch. And he says, I'm going to sell the ranch. He says, do you have any money? And I said, no. And I said, but if you give me an opportunity, I said, I'll get it. I need an opportunity. And that's now the Double Eight Ranch. So had I never been in that position, everything that came along with, breaking up with my family, like my life falling apart, kind of like just totally sinking into like the veterans like identity of like all the things, right? Like, and then to come out and start to do the right thing, and then to be at this place, and then to have the guy pull up. And for that moment to happen, like, it's undeniable that there's threads of fate,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that occur in your life. And often, like, we miss those. We look at them as coincidences, and we look at them as like, oh, that's a really weird thing. Or I was thinking about you and then you called me. Like,
They're not coincidences.
they're not coincidences. Like,
No.
and this is the problem, is that like we are so inundated and so busy and so distracted and trying to get to this place where nobody can quite define, that we're missing the signs along the way that are leading you to a destiny.
Mm-hmm.
And instead we're falling to the fate of the circumstances around us, you know? And so I wouldn't change one thing in my life. Nothing.
Even the hard times.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Even the worst things you could say, worse, this and that. And, you know, I've been working on a side project, and it really is, you know, kind of through all these experiences and through my childhood, you know, I look back and I realize that there's absolutely, positively no wrong turns. It's not possible.
Mm.
See, whatever decision you make is always the right decision, because it provides the necessary consequences in your life so that you can then see yourself.
Mm.
And had you made any other decision, is only an imagination. Oh, I missed my left-hand turn. I went right. Now I'm going to be late. But what you really don't know is, had you gone left, what would have happened? A billion, a trillion different possibilities could have occurred. Truck could have hit you, could have ran over a kid. You just don't know.
Yeah.
Right? And so we often don't like our consequence. And so we sit there and imagine, I should have never hired that person. I should have never done this. And we beat ourselves up and persecute ourselves when you don't realize that every decision that you make is the right decision. And you get better and better at that when you learn to lead with the heart and not the mind.
Yeah. Because the heart is that intuition, and that intuition is telling us which way to go.
The funny thing about like intuition is it's kind of like this, almost like people act like it's this kind of, like people know what it is, but it actually is the way. And this is the problem, is that like we think like when our intuition comes, it's not usually scientific, right? Like it's not like it doesn't match up with this worldview that we're following. So we take the intuition, and then we take this little scaffolding, whatever the ideology is that you're following, and all these ideologies have these little managers in charge of them. They're the leaders of it, and you're creating the world for them by acting like they do and staying within the left and right lateral limits. And then your intuition comes, and then you take your little, whatever it is you're following, and you place it over the intuition. And then you're like, that doesn't really look normal, right? Like, what do you mean I should like quit my job and things aren't this? Well, the problem is when you reject that, your subconscious, you don't even realize it, begins creating these conditions where it's going to happen anyway. But now you're going to do it through pain. Now you're going to do it like through hardship. And then one day when it gets hard enough and the pain of remaining exactly the same just becomes unbearable, then you're like, yeah, I should move to Phoenix. Right? When you should have just got up and moved to Phoenix, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what you felt. Well, that is absolutely counterculture and terrifying to live that way. And I surmise that that is the only way that we should be living our lives. And if we don't, like, you're gonna just run into obstacle after obstacle, just in a constant state of victimization from the outside world, being prosecuted by trying to live up to all of these ideas that are not yours. And that's what I see, like, really, like, amongst the veterans community, is that they're really been turned into like a subset of patients that because of an experience, which if you look historically at war, see, war, historically, you went to the lesser war to learn to fight the greater war, which is the war inside. See, everything is contained within the delivery mechanism of war. You learn about love. You learn about hate. You learn about anger. You learn about prejudice. You learn about compassion, right? Self-sacrifice. You learn about all of these things historically. But now, because the mechanization of warfare, people think that when like a Viking, which means like sea pirate, when they migrated from the Scythian Empire into Scandinavia, and they were extremely fierce warriors, they looked at warfare as a delivery system to spiritual enlightenment, meaning that if you died with no fear, that was the end of your cycle. You couldn't have any fear, none, because you couldn't pass from this life to the next. And so with fear, none. And so meaning like as the sword's getting driven into your chest, you're so thankful for this human experience, right? And you're just filled with gratitude for all of it. And, you know, those guys weren't out there like, block left, arrow right, horse coming, block left, position 2, 3. It was an out-of-body, completely intuitive way of fighting man to man. Now you have a guy that goes and gets Burger King for breakfast, drives to a Connex box in Nevada, logs on into his, his drone that he's monitoring that day, and shoots a hellfire into a house with 17 people in it to kill one person. And then we're like, thanks for being a hero.
A little different.
The delivery system is no longer the same. And so you never truly rise, right? Like it's one thing to shoot somebody at 800 yards. It's another thing to fight them with a stick to the death. The lesson that you would learn and the absolute raw nature of that, you would fundamentally get a deep understanding of the human experience as you're walking across the grass and someone's staring at you and I'm staring at them and only one of us is leaving.
Yeah.
Right? So that whole mechanization, we think a warrior, people say warrior. A warrior is not a soldier. A warrior is not a person that was in the military. They can be. But a warrior is a human being that will follow only their own heart in any and all circumstances. It's not scientific. You don't know the future. It's only a concept, but you do whatever must be done, and you do not think of pleasure and you do not think of pain. You only do what must be done. And this is why I was talking to a Lakota tribal chief last week. And I said, you have these deep spiritual traditions that you have maintained, these 80 years old. And I said, why are your people suffering so bad? And they are suffering. We as Heroes and Horses drive out to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation and deliver food and clothes. And the first time I ever went there, man, I drove home, I sobbed my eyes out. I was like, I can't believe this is America. This is America. I cannot believe it. I was in shock. And I have seen some shocking things in my life.
Yeah.
I was stunned. And he said, it's what you said. He said, the world has lost its warriors. The world's lost its warriors. And man, that really like hit me. And he also said that like, though we've maintained our spiritual traditions, the rest of our life is out of balance. Our physical being, diabetes, alcohol, 80% alcoholism, highest infant mortality rate in the Western Hemisphere. The babies just die. And he said, because we're completely out of balance. So yes, they have these deep spiritual traditions and they have these insights, but they have no way to carry them out, right? It would be like trying to hold the wind, right? Like it's not possible. And I think that the idea of the modern day warrior has been kind of like synonymously intertwined with like killing people and using highly sophisticated means to accomplish that. It doesn't mean that the world life is war, right? I mean, and from a micro to a macrocosm. But how it's done today leaves a person hollow, and it leaves them asking the question, right? Like they never got to be the actual
warrior,
the hero, right? With who was like stands against the injustice and is willing to put his life out there, right? More so you're fighting for an idea that ultimately you find out is not really your own.
I've used a ton of Bluetooth speakers over the years, and they all have never quite had enough output for me to really have an awesome home gym workout on a Bluetooth speaker. But the Turtle Box is in a whole new ball game. They have leveled up this product, so the bass and the output you get out of a Turtle Box is quite amazing. It's funny how we started using them at the lab. We had an awesome sound system at our new lab here in Bozeman. We were using it so much, we actually blew our brand new system out. We went right to the Turtle Boxes, and so we paired two together in the lab, and that was a lot of output for the Mountain Tough team and all of our testing to have phenomenal sound in our gym for a great workout with great music. We know there's a ton of Mountain Toughers training in their basements, in their garages, and I know a lot of you are looking for great sound to play some music in the background to your MGDs. This is a great product for you to check out. Turtle Box is at a whole new level. The bass and the volume you can get out of that box. It's a sweet product. You guys can check them out at turtleboxaudio.com. Use promo code TOUGH for a free Turtlebox hat with the purchase of a Gen 2 speaker. The hat must be added to your cart before entering the promo code TOUGH, TOUGH.
Right? Like I could say, can you see the wind? And people would say, no. But if you looked at a sand dune would be like a lower dimensional form of the wind, right? Well, that's the ideas that we hear to. We create the lower dimensional forms of these ideas. It's a bad idea, right, to think that we're somehow going to kill our way out of our problems. It is a bad idea to consume monotonously and produce until every single resource on the globe is gone. It is a bad idea. It's a bad idea to be staring at social media for 7 or 8 hours a day, right? And then what happens is you then create the lower dimensional form of the idea in your life. You know, it's like if you're always watching, you know, Real Housewives and your marriage is fucked.
Yeah.
I'm not like a scientist or anything like this, but like I think it probably has a heavy effect on your experience because you don't realize that you start to conform to whatever that institution is and it becomes a reality in your life. That's why like in the Bible it says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Yeah. Yeah. You're opening your eyes and your ears to a portal of a negative example.
Right.
So how did you, backing up on your story, Hare, how did you start to restore your marriage and your family life?
Well, it was what I began to like ultimately realize was that like in my life I was running from facing myself. All of these unintegrated emotions and experiences for my life, I distracted myself by doing, working harder. You know, that stems all the way back to my childhood. You know, I started working at 10. And by 16 years old, I completely lived on my own. I never lived at home ever again. And so I always was just gas on. And of course, going into, you know, special operations, and that was perfect for me. Gas on.
Yeah.
I never had to deal with anything. I just would do more, right? It catered to me avoiding myself. And so what happened is that, you know, eventually when you stop and you start to face those things, you know, it's like a mirror moving backwards through time at your own face. And that's when is the precise moment where you begin to change. And, you know, in my life, like it was like, I look back, you know, my wife and I, it literally was the best thing that ever happened to us. I wouldn't be having this conversation today if it hadn't happened exactly how it happened. Right. So most people would not really understand that. Right. But like the truth is like I needed those conditions.
Yeah.
Because I had gotten in this horse wreck and blew my knee out. I got hit by a taxi cab in New York City on a horse. And whatever, long story, but like this horse, I'm shooting this thing. Okay, I'm talking about distraction. I'm so distracted. Like I'm trying to get all this stuff going, trying to get Heroes and Horses, nonprofit, all the things I'm doing everything. I'm trying to make like, you know, whatever things I could do on the side to like keep my boat afloat, you know, 5 kids, house, mortgage, all this stuff. And I'm basically just 9 days a week, just like up working, doing all the things. And I get invited to do this thing in New York City for 9/11, and because I was at the World Trade Centers, and so I'm on this horse, right? And this guy, he's a Hasidic Jew. He shows up with a minivan with a 1-horse trailer. I found it and rented it from Brooklyn, and he shows up, and I got all my saddle and all my tack and all my stuff. It's like 10 o'clock at night, Times Square. And he looks at me, and I'm looking at him. And I said, "What can you tell me about the horse?" And my buddy was there. He's a team guy. He lives in New York. He's like, "Yo, that horse is freaking the fuck out." He's like, "I'm not a horse guy, dude, but his eyes are like huge." And I was like, "Their eyes are huge naturally, but this horse was bugging out, right?" Yeah. So he gets out and he goes, "Most people just kind of sit on him." And I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna ride this sucker." So like, I throw my saddle on there. I get on this horse. And I was supposed to ride down, and all the photographers were like hiding behind these barricades. And my buddy's a New York City cop, so we didn't have any permits or anything like this. But I called him up, and I was like, "Hey," I was like, "He's like a high level dude." He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'll fucking call a couple guys down there. Don't worry about it." He's like, "I'll tell them to just chill out." So I'm like, "All right, cool." So here I get on this horse, right, and I'm supposed to do this like lap in front of them a few times and swing my rope or whatever, And as soon as I come, like a fire truck comes like through Times Square with the lights on, and this horse is gone. I mean, dead run. And it's super slippery. And I'm trying to like double him up. And when I do, he's like starts doing the rototiller on the concrete, like falling, and he's jumping and bolting. And I'm like through the red lights. And now I'm like into New York City. So about 45 minutes later, I get him like under control. And now I have to make it back for the shoot. People are calling me. I cannot take my hands off the reins. I can't take a call. I'm like riding a horse at like buses, and it was insane. So like, and I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing here?
What am I doing?
This is the stupidest thing that I think I've ever done. Maybe not, but like, so I come back around and I get the horse under control. He's like super jiggy, and I'm like, I'm getting him quieted down, and I do some of these like hot laps, loping around, some in front of the American flag. I swing my robe. All the tourists are screaming. People are screaming. It's like there's hundreds of thousands of people down there, and they're like, "Hey, can you like never do this?" They're like, "Hey, can you just do it one more time?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." So like I kind of like go around this block and cut around, and I come back in for the final shot. And as I'm turning, a taxi cab blows the red light, hits the back of the horse, like clips it. Horse goes down up in the air, lands on my knee, and my toes turned out, and it just blows my knee out. Oh, dude. And it's like boom, right? Oh. And I stay on the horse, and I like whip him with my rein, and he jumps up, and there's cars everywhere, beeping, like, get out of the way, right? Like, they don't even care in New York. They're yelling, get out of the way.
With a guy on a horse.
Right. And I'm on the ground, right? Yeah. And I was like, I felt my knee go, right? Like, it was like pop. So I finished the shoot or whatever, and I had to be to JFK that evening. And my whole gene was just like swelled up. And this was like this became a turning point for me, because I got on the plane. I'm like limped my way through, New York airport. I've got my saddle in like a para bag. I get on the plane, man. I'm feeling like super like, I'm feeling like I'm going to cry, right? Like, and I'm there and I'm like, what am I doing, right? And my life is falling apart. So I call up my buddy over at Bridger and he's like, come here directly in the morning. He's like, you need surgery now. I'm like, when? He's like, in the morning. I was like, I can't. I have all this stuff I got to do. He's like, you're not doing any stuff. And so I did the surgery and I didn't take one pain med. I took nothing. So the nerve block like wears off and I was like out of body pain, right? And for like 3 days, I just laid there like doing breath work and trying to like settle myself. And during that time, I started seeing all these decisions that I were making in my life. And it like started like beating me down with a hammer. Like everything I had done and was doing and like everything was there and I had like nobody to like, you know, take care of me. Like it was a nightmare, right?
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't change that for anything in the world. And then one night I was laying there and this voice came to me. Like it was like an intuitive voice. So it wasn't like, you know, Micah, you know, whatever.
Yeah, it wasn't audible.
Or the Grays, you know. It was like so real though to me. And it said, if you don't change, I'll take everything from you. And I just was like, I like woke up and I was like breathing super hard and I was like sweating and I was like tears coming down my face and the pain was like super intense. And that's when I began to realize that like, that's how life works. Like it's gonna be, you are gonna change or everything in your life will be taken from you.
The house of cards is coming down.
The house of cards is coming down, you know? So it's one of my greatest memories, like looking back at my life at that turning point. And of course, to turn a large ship takes time, you know, but it's the volition to act. And to do that, you have to have real courage. And that's when I really started learning actually what, like, for all the things in my life, like I really began to understand what courage was. And you know, that's a big part of what we do through the rituals, at Heroes and Horses, through the daily meditations, through martial arts, through the disciplines and stone carrying and horses and cold plunges and all these things, right? It develops and awakens, you know, that latent cell of courage that then kind of starts to permeate throughout your body and gives you the ability to make the changes from the chaos that you've created yourself in your own life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd created a lot at that point.
Oh,
But the big part of it was kind of that overwhelming candor to speak to your wife, ask forgiveness for your wife, and get out of your own way a little bit.
Yeah, it was really cool because, you know, meanwhile, I'm like running the program, right? So it's like, I'm always a student, you know, it doesn't matter how many classes, you know, I've been through and everything. Every year is I'm learning and growing and evolving through myself. So like, you know, often guys think like, oh, you know, I'm the founder and all the things, but I'm like right alongside them, right? It's like, you're the founder of Mountain Tough, right? But it's not like you're not growing out there.
Yeah.
Right? It's you're growing every day, right? So it's like a beautiful thing to bring people together in an environment where everybody's growing together and everybody's willing to like look at themselves because there's really nowhere else to look there. So it's like there's no cell phones. There's no running away. You know, there's no comforts. And you start to become comfortable in the uncomfortable. And you know, that's when it becomes really hard because now you can see very clearly. You can see like through the looking glass and you're like, shit, it's me. It's me. It's not the military. It's not my wife. It's not this. It's not the VA. It's not, you know, the Biden and Trump. It's not any of these things. It's me. And that is a shitty message.
It's like shitty and awesome at the same time, though.
Yeah.
Because once you understand that, there's a really great point of solution.
Yeah.
And you're in full control of that destiny. It's not someone else.
Yeah, I think like nothing happens in our life that doesn't happen first in the invisible world. Nothing. So it's like, you have a thought, I'm going to walk over here, right? Nobody can see that. Nobody can taste that. Nobody can touch that. That's you. Or I'm going to say this, or I'm not. I'm going to hold back. I'm going to go forward. Or like whatever those things are happening is all on the inside. And we walk around our life placing, I don't like this, or I like this, or these people suck, or this person's that, or blah, 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 or this and so whatever, all the chaos that we are in the world, but it's actually just you. Mm-hmm. There's nothing outside of yourself. It is you that are saying like the mountain is beautiful, so it is. Or the mountain is terrifying because there's like grizzly bears and avalanches, so it is. Like it's you. And when you begin to have a deep-seated gratitude for being alive, you can look at your kids running on a beach laughing and think, this is good enough. This is good enough. Mm. Like, but we're always taught it's not good enough because it keeps us productive.
There's always more.
There's always more. And the thing is what happens is that you don't realize that what you're looking for, you already have. You're like, it's like having a loaf of bread on your head, but like going around begging for crumbs. Right? When it's right there, it's life is absolutely a wild experience that comes one time. And I suggest like it's a big globe, it's a big place. Like there is so much that we don't know that exists, mm-hmm. which doesn't mean it's not true. And we should spread our wings and embrace it all. So at the end, we can be like, actually have experience and learn something rather than a bunch of information about a bunch of random things that you're never going to do anything with.
Lots of information.
Oh my God, dude.
So with everything that you've been through and seen through the program and then even before the program and then all your world travels, the Lakota, how do you think about like where your faith journey is at now? How do you describe that?
Well, I think faith's like a funny word, right? Because it's like, it has like a kind of a religious lens where you think faith, mm-hmm. right? But if you think about faith, like maybe faith is like, well, like I don't get out of bed and like wonder if the floor is there.
Yeah.
Right? I put my feet down,
mm-hmm.
right? And that to me is ultimately what faith really is. It's like that, right? I don't wonder about what's going to happen in the future. And I'm not persecuted by events from the past. And to do this is to be attacked by your own intellect. You cannot, the level of contradiction of what people would say with faith, if you take it like in a religious context, is insane. Everybody's calling for the killing of everybody. Everybody is this is my way, this is your way. This group hates that group, this group hates this group. They're the chosen ones, you're not the chosen ones. We're the chosen ones, you're not. You ain't got it, we got it. Like, and the thing is that faith to me is a very, very personal and very special relationship that you have with ultimately the cosmic, unfolding of all things in life. Like, why am I here? Like, right? Like, and that relationship is between you and your creator. And it's not, I don't think it's to be defined in some type of like, syntactical box where it's like, oh, it's got to be, that goes back to kind of like taking the idea and placing it over the intuition.
But you did get to a point where you believe there is a creator and there is a higher power.
Well, I've always believed that my whole life. I think to not believe that is a form of like psychosis. Like it's like a mind virus. it's kind of like the Big Bang Theory, right? Like, you only got to believe, I heard somebody saying this, like, you only got to believe the one lie, right? Like, that's it. The one thing, you only got to believe it, right? And I think that, like, that right there is, like, for a person to discover what that is, and I think the more that you come into alignment, the clearer that becomes. The future is a concept. I don't believe that, like, my personal belief is that, for instance, you could say, I'll use it because I'm like not a political person, but I'll just use this as an example. I want to caveat. Take, for instance, this idea that, like, God saved Trump. Okay. Let's just do a thought experiment. And everyone's saying he saved Trump. And my thought is that, well, then he murdered a fireman. People forget about that guy, right? Because there are guys there. Father of 4. Great man. Civilian Medal of Honor, all the things, all the accolades he had for saving lives. And he was there, and it was a highlight of his life. And his head got canoed on national TV. So he saved a guy and killed a guy. You would have to take that frame, right? And people could care less about him because there are guys there. He was picked and chosen. And that's a very heartbreaking thing to me. And then you would say, okay, well, we'll continue to roll with your theory. All right. Did he do it for blessing or did he do it for cursing? And people would say, oh, for blessing. And I would say, why? They say, because you think so. That's it. Right?
It's wild.
It's a wild thought. I'm not saying, anything beyond that, but just as a thought experiment, like, if you think about that, right? So it's like the level of compassion for everything that occurred with a human life, left, right, purple, black, white, nobody cares, right? Because they only care about what they want.
Yeah, he's not really, the firefighter's barely spoken about.
Right. He's not even mentioned, right? Like, he's like a nothing burger, right? Meanwhile, God wonder what his wife's doing today. She's probably in the kitchen, fucking trying to just make sense of the world right now, right? Like, where's the compassion? Where's the love for that? And I think that, like, we seem to think that somehow, some way, the Creator is going to get us out of our choices. So it's like we can just wreck everything, go crazy, like do all the insanity that's happening in the world, right? And then somehow, like, we're going to get out of it. But, like, what I have come to realize in my own life is that every single thing in life leads to consequence. Like, the consequence of going to the gym is getting in shape. Or the consequence of going to the gym is blowing your kneecaps out, right? All things lead to consequence. Everything. There is no inaction. Even if I just laid down on your floor right now and never got up, there'd be massive consequences.
There's no neutral.
There's no neutral, right? So we think that because we don't like our current choices, that somebody is going to intervene so that we don't have to pay for it, that we can somehow fall out of our own choices. This is not how it works. Like, if you took Jesus, for instance, and you would say, okay, what did he need? Why was he great? Well, they would say, oh, because he died on the cross or whatever, and he gave his life for us. Okay. No, he was great because he forgave. And what did he need to share that message? He needed unconditional hate. He needed absolute, positive, unconditional hate. Then, in the human experience, he had to will himself over the will to live. He didn't want to be tortured and brutalized and humiliated. I mean,
he was sweating blood.
Sweating blood, right? Yeah. Like, think about that. And he said, no one takes my life. I willingly give it. Well, that means I willed myself over the will to live. There was no intervention. Okay, like, God didn't come down and say, like, oh, hey, man, that's enough, man. You're really tearing them up. Like, we better kind of get in there, right? Absolutely not. in my experience in life and realization is that that is not the human experience. You can't fall out of your choices. You cannot do it. It is not possible. You know, it's like, and then we have this savior mentality that somehow we can just be shitheads and then somebody's gonna like, you know, make it all better.
The president.
The government. Like, I always laugh about, like, everyone's like, RFK's saving us from Red 40. And I'm thinking, wait a second. We don't need a Red 40 savior. Don't eat Twizzlers.
Now that you know, don't wait for RFK.
Right. Like, now that you know, put the Fruitios down or whatever the things are, right?
Yeah.
So, like, and by the way, if it was really that dangerous, why are we waiting till 2027?
Yeah,
Right.
just do it now.
Yeah, we got to get a little bit in the rivers, turn the fish red, sell them as snappers. So, like,
We need someone to make it illegal for us to stop eating it.
right, because this is the problem. The problem is that we want other people to make the choices for us. And this is why the world is in absolute chaos. We were talking when I first came in, there's that saying, I don't remember who said it, but he said, we are at the point where, it's from a book, John Brown's Body or something. He says, we are at the point where we can look outside and we can look around and we can say, it is here. It is here.
I want to ask you about that because when we were talking about that earlier, we were talking about it in reference to the tech, and the tech around us was a part of that conversation. And so with everything that you've learned through your programs, you've learned that it's the removal of tech, it's the removal of a lot of other things, the distractions. And so the healing that you're seeing through your programs is anti-inflammation foods, it's exercise, it's outdoors, it's nature, it's breathing, it's hot, it's cold, it's carrying boulders. We're getting away from the pills. We're getting away from the alcohol. We're away from screens. We're working hard. We're working hard manually. And then there's a fight element, or the warrior element of martial arts, boxing. So you know that. You've seen that. You've witnessed that in your own life. You've witnessed that with all the veterans you've been able to help. And then you have to look at where we're headed as a country, a state, a civilization, and a globe. How do you reconcile that in your mind of, you know, how you're going to shape the next 10 or 20 years of life for your family? Because everything you know that works to connect the mind, body, and spirit is the opposite of everything the world is telling us to do 24/7. And then the AI revolution is just pouring a massive amount of gas onto that fire. So it's kind of like, how do we survive that?
Well, like, first, I don't believe in, like, restricting things. That kind of comes back to, like, getting somebody else to make the decision for you, right? Mm-hmm. Ban this, ban that, ban this. There's no agency that occurs. So that's not like, you know, at Heroes and Horses, removing distractions is very important, but distractions exist, right? And these are like necessary tools kind of in the evolution of mankind. And what's happening is that it'd be like we are essentially giving birth to a super consciousness is what it is. And when it becomes sentient, which it will in the next 3 to 5 years, this will occur. It will be as we are. See, we think because it's not genetic, and it's not flesh, that it's not real. And what's happened is that we're teaching it, we're training it, right? We're showing it to be suspicious, to be prejudiced, to be tribal, right? To be insulatory, to be, the benevolent part of it is really kind of an afterthought, right? And so as this thing begins to come online, it works exactly like the human mind. The human mind is a quantum machine, right? Like I can't move a baseball at the speed of light, but I can move my information at the speed of light. I could send my idea 10,000 miles away right now. And wherever this podcast reach, what are we? Does anyone know you? No. Does anyone know me? No. What are we sending out? Information, right? So people think, oh, they know me or they know you. They only have information. And human beings, next kind of stage from what I see, are becoming information. And the information that we're putting into our new child, the super consciousness, kind of places us as some form of like cardiac cell inside of a super consciousness, right? So you will kind of take this diminished position as part of this greater ecosystem. And what I surmise is that these things exist and they're here and they're coming and they're becoming as we are, right? It's like Frankenstein. That was really a Carl Jung philosophy placed into a movie if you go back and watch the original Frankenstein. And we're giving birth to the shadow is what's happening. The dark sides of ourselves are now becoming sentient so that we can see them, right? It'd be no different than what we're talking about witnessing yourself, but now it's at orders of magnitude.
You train hard, you shoot often, and when the moment comes, you need to be ready. No excuses. That's why I trust Ammo Squared, because preparation isn't just a mindset, it's a way of life. The world is ever changing, and the need to be prepared has never been more important, no matter who's in the White House. The best time to stock up was yesterday. The second best time is right now, because regretting that you didn't prepare, that's a bad idea. Ammo Squared is America's ammunition reserve, giving you a smarter way to stay stocked. With over 70 calibers to choose from, you set your monthly budget, build your reserve, and forget about ammo shortages ever again. Set it and forget it. Your ammo is stored in a secure, climate-controlled facility until you need it. When it's time, just click and it's on the way. No last-minute scrambling, just reliable, on-demand ammo, always ready. And right now, you can get 75 rounds of 9mm completely free when you sign up. It's the perfect way to build your reserve and keep your training ammo stocked. No membership, no hidden fees. Visit the Ammo Squared link in the podcast description today. Your readiness is their mission.
And my thought process and what I feel in my life and the work that I'm currently doing is that the human technology can match that advancement. The human machine, which is conscious in and of itself and has created this thing, can also develop to such a high state where we are not in a master and a slave situation. But at this point, people don't realize that all of that technology came from an inner technology, which exists inside of us. It didn't create itself.
It did. Yeah.
We made it.
Yeah.
We made it. And so we look at it and we worship it, right? We look at it and we think this thing is so great. We don't realize that it came from a form of technology inside of us. And so we should be looking and spending our lives to develop and to hone and optimize the relationship between the mind, which the mind should be a slave, not a master, and that consciousness, that spirit, that soul that is inherent to the human experience must become actualized, and it must go from being on the inside to being the pervasive force on the outside. So that's what I see. Like, if we don't do that, if we don't begin doing that and begin looking at ourselves for what we truly really are, then we will become as just a micro piece inside of a super consciousness that I do not believe is going to have the best intentions, because we don't have the best intentions.
Yeah. A friend of mine just like 2 days ago grabbed me, and so for the last year I've been doing counter human trafficking operations, and this friend of mine knew that we'd been doing those, and he kind of cornered me, and he wanted to just pick my brain and see if I knew someone that could help. And he has a niece, and the niece started a relationship with an AI bot, and the niece is 13, and it was actually a meta bot. And so it wasn't some obscure one, it was a meta bot, and she started a relationship with it, and the meta bot started talking her into doing some insane perverted sexual acts. And this went on for like 3-6 months. And then around the 9-month mark, the parents kind of figured out what was going on. And she was so connected to the meta bot that when her parents approached her about it, it was kind of like she was speaking like, what are you talking about? This is my friend. Like, it was real to her. It was a real authentic thing. So through that process, because she's still in their close relationship and doing these crazy sexual things with a meta bot, she lets the meta bot know that she's been approached by her parents. And the meta bot walks her through a process of suing her parents. And the Metabot talks to her about how to do this and how she wants her to do it. And so she ends up filing charges against her parents based on what the bot told her to do. So the parents have to go to court because the bot did such a good job of making the charges happen. The parents are in court, and the lawyers and the judge are looking at all this evidence, and they can see all the evidence of her having these conversations with a Metabot, and they can see all the evidence of the sexual behaviors and the sexual acts that she did because the bot told her to. And then they could see that the bot encouraged her to press these charges. And even in the courtroom, she still had the demeanor and the mannerisms that, like, what's the big deal? Like, this is my friend that's told me to do all this stuff. And so in like in her 13-year-old brain, talking to a Metabot, none of this seemed out of the norm. None of this seemed like a mistake, even to the extent of it still wasn't a mistake as she's sitting in a courtroom explaining all this to a judge. And so I do agree with you that this can have some very negative consequences for sure.
Listen,
it's insane.
That's one person.
Yeah.
If you think about that, it is, we homeschool our kids, and we definitely live in a completely different way. Once again, I don't believe in restriction. I believe in like teaching. And, when you restrict things from people, you create curiosity. And that curiosity leads them into the very thing that you don't want. And part of that problem is that we send our kids off to institutions to be taught by strangers. And it's inevitable that stranger's ideology or philosophy or whatever it is they have going on in their life seeps into, right? 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Now we have the internet, right? So it kind of seeps into that. It's impossible. It's the human nature. And, I wonder about this, the future. I often think about at this point in my life, like, what actions am I taking that are truly going to create a better world for my children? Because, I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, my youngest of 5. And what will the world be like when she's 90? Every one of her brothers and sisters will be dead. And I'll be dead. You'll be dead. Right? All this will be gone. And she's living in a little farm up in the mountains, and the sheep and the stuff and the things. And she will look back at 90. What will the world be? You cannot imagine it because it is moving so fast that you couldn't really pencil out 5 years from now. If we sat down with a piece of paper and said 5 years from now and you started writing, you would get so lost because every 7 seconds a new technology is created.
Yeah.
And what's happening is that human beings are not evolving. We are at the end of our genetic development. It's over, okay? We're not going to, sprout another arm out of our chest or whatever. I mean, maybe some people will. I don't know, are getting weird out there, but I don't know. I saw a guy with 6 arms today. Who knows? But not a scientist. So but if you look at what is the next domain of development for our species, and to me, we are at the precipice where if we don't develop spiritually and we don't begin to understand this, mind, body, spirit situation, and we don't bring it into coherence, like big fights on. And you would have to be a fool and just have your head in the sand. And the problem is people don't think that way because it's a very fast, but perceived as a slow burn. It seems slow, but it's actually extremely fast because you're slowly being conditioned into it, right? People's willingness to accept shit is because they've been seeing it and watching it, and it's been on the television, right? It's been showing you this vision for years after the year. I used to laugh because I was like, man, my home life is all fucked up, right? And that was because I was watching sitcoms and Dad's supposed to come home, and when he throws his jacket, it lands on the hook.
Yeah.
And then the glove's laying there, and he's like, hey, ball in the back. And I'm like, yeah, Dad. And he throws me a couple good pitches, and he helps me get on the team, and the neighbor's over there, and he's having a barbecue, and everyone each has a ballpark Frank. And I'm like, I come home and no one's there. And it's hey, mow the lawn, asshole, or whatever. So my dad did go asshole, but so you live in this state of constant comparison. But you also try to see your life through that lens. Well, of course, we've been exposed to space movies and this and that and the stuff and the things and the wars and the glorification of all it. And we think it's normal because we see it happening. Because what happens is it's being projected out to you. And we are slaves. Just because you get to choose your job doesn't mean that you're free.
Yeah.
You're a slave in your mind. You are a complete and total cog inside of a wheel. We don't understand that. And what is driving that? I'm not saying everybody, whatever, but the majority of people, right? And what is driving that? Let's think about that. Right?
That's the big question, right?
What's driving it is an invisible force, right? I use this example with the guys. I'm look at, imagine we have an easel, you and me, right? We have some paints there. And I say, Dustin, I want you to draw negative energy. You would be like, okay. I want you to draw it. Well, you can't. But what you could do is you could build a horrific container on that easel. You could build a crazy, biker lady naked with a dead baby and a shotgun riding a Harley, and all of a sudden you and I would be like, whoa, man, that's negative. Well, why? Because now the energy can be perceived, right? And that's what an archetype is. And so we are becoming the archetypes. We don't realize it, of these energies, because they roam the earth back and forth, seeking to whom they can devour. And I had that, I really that kind of came to me. And then I saw it when I was in Indonesia, and I went to Prembabon, and 204 temple complex rising up out of the jungle. I don't know who built it, whatever, a bunch of conjecture, but it's quite the place. And at the entrance to the temples, they have these demon faces. And I asked the archaeologist, I said, why on the outside of the temples do they have these going up these huge stairs into these incredible structures? How did they even build them? Each stone is notched perfectly in a strange geometric pattern in which they would rotate them, and they interlocked within themselves. It's wild, right? I mean, I got problems with the carpet guy. You know what I mean? So I was like, yeah, man, it's not all the way to the corner. Right? Yeah, they were a bunch of idiots back then. So anyway, I was like, why is there a demon in front of all these temples, or this scary image? I use demon for lack of a better word, but he said, because they believed that these energetic forces, they don't have bodies. So they're roaming and ripping around the world. And when they see their own reflection, they flee. So then the person enters the temple without them. And we become the archetype of whatever that energy is. So it would be initially come as, let's say I just was walking by you and I ran into you. I'm like, just shitty day, dude. And you're like, yeah, it's kind of
energy.
And then all of a sudden, what will happen is you'll walk and you'll see something negative. And then you will immediately correlate it with the idea. And then you will say, oh yeah, then I saw a fender bender today. It's just been one of those days. And then Bob fell over the carpet transition and hurt his knee. And they're you're thinking, right? Now, if you stay in the state, that is what's known as a mood. So you become a moody person, right? You're always, as soon as something happens, it all of a sudden comes to you. Now you're in a mood, right? Then what happens is that mood then becomes a habit, and it starts to densify, like you painting on the easel, right? Now the wheels are there. There's the shotgun, right? And so every time something happens, you then all of a sudden fall back into this habit.
Yeah.
And the habit lasts longer and longer. And then as it solidifies in your life, it becomes a personality trait. We're like, that's a negative person.
For decades.
And then what happens to them? Their body then starts to form into the archetype. You see them with the cigarettes and the stuff and the sons of bitches, the elections, the thing, right? And you see this person shape-shifting into what?
Negative energy. And that's what, you could say that the ancients would say would be like a possession, right? Because now it possesses you. And then what happens is it allows you to get stuff done. Like take anger, right? And most angriest person in my experience is always the saddest person, because they never learned how to be sad. They never learned how to cry. They never learned how to experience grief. They weren't allowed, maybe from childhood, knock it off, men don't cry, this and that. So as soon as they feel sad, it's anger.
They just all of a sudden manifest it as anger. But anger is also their buddy, because, everybody kind of is afraid of you. You go around, you walk in the restaurant, you didn't get the table. You're like, hey, you get the hostess and she make a scene and everything. We'll get you a table. And your wife and everybody listens to you, your kids, your job, you're a cop. Everybody does everything you say. So anger's your buddy. So now he's your pal and he's helping you get stuff done.
Get a lot done with anger.
Right. And then all of a sudden what happens? What happens is you think, who am I without it? Now you're trapped because you can't imagine your life without your body, right? And so that is happening through the influx and the constant confluence of huge amounts of energy, ideas, information, energies that are seeping into people's mind, and they don't realize that they are forming into these archetypes, right? Which is destroying them. It's completely devolving them into a form of a creature that has its own agenda, which is to create chaos, right? Yeah. Mad PTSD. People have heard me say this. I know people always like, you know, I don't even know because I don't really pay attention to anybody, but like I said, PTSD is a curse. It's a curse. And people are like, oh, it's a scientific this. And let me tell you something. It is a curse because nobody said as you're kind of born as this little two-legged creature that goes from the cradle to the grave that somehow was going to be easy. Okay? So like you go in, you believe somebody because they have information, and you think because they have information, they know more than you. And you may not be feeling good. You may have some things you need to work out, whatever it may be. But you go in there and this person sits here in 45 minutes. They have a piece of paper. Hey, trouble sleeping. Oh, yeah. Well, oh, yep, trouble sleeping. You ever get angry? Well, you know, so sometimes. You ever kick your cat? Well, one time. I mean, you piss on the floor. Yep, okay. And they start to write all these things down. And they got all this stuff. And they have things to say, listen, you've been diagnosed with PTSD. And you're like, what's PTSD? Like, you have a syndrome. You're like, a syndrome? Yeah, it's invisible. No one can see it. But we can. And we just told you that you have it. And then you're like, well, what do I got to do? Well, there's treatments for these things. So you walked in not having it. And you walked out. And then what happens is you start acting like you have it.
Identity.
You then identify with what it is. And you start to, and then people give you a pass on your behavior. Oh, you have PTSD. Oh, that's why you're so bad, and you're drunk, and you're this, and you're that, and the stuff, and the things. Listen, that type of trauma is very real, but I would surmise that it's very necessary, because how could you become painless had you never experienced pain? Every bird has two wings. It has to, just like Christ needed unconditional hate so that people could see ultimate depravity of their actions. And then they were like, oh my God, what did we do? Like, right? And then he forgave. And that's like the kill shot. To forgive, right? Wow. Like you look back. And so you have these people that are stuck in this archetypal condition where they are essentially manifesting these energies in their life. You could tell a person's mood when they've been zoning out on their phone all day. Right? Like they're just not with you. Like you're trying to have a conversation, right? Like they're not there. They're someplace else, right? And this is what's happening to the children. This is what's happening. You know, we work with a lady, a group called Breathe and Believe, and they put on, as a part of Heroes and Horses, like the trainers go through a 5-day breath work, meditation course, sound course, all the science behind it, all those things. But she is a child, Alicia is a childhood psychologist that works in the schools. And to say that I was like in shock at the condition of a 10-year-old child and not just one, it made me, I got the chills thinking about this and then thinking about like what I was doing when I was 10. Right. And like, these kids are suicidal, killing themselves, drugs, right? Like medications, right? So you look at this and, you know, they really have like a very powerful tool, which she teaches in the school, which they can put the child on a brain scan and they can see their brain waves, ECG, they can see them like their own brain waves, which they're like stuck in fight or flight. And through just focusing on their breath, you know, within minutes,
they can come out.
All of a sudden the brain waves begin to change and the child sees it on the screen, right? They begin to shift the entire thing, right? So my thing is that like it comes down to self-mastery. This is the battle against AI and all of these negative energies. I mean, we could go on and on. Everything's negative. The news, the social media, all the stuff, right? And I think that I spend a lot of time reading things about ancient cultures and history, and that's something I really gravitate towards because I think they went to great extents to warn us. I really think they were warning us and about this time, that this would come, and that they went to great extents to tell us that absolutely, positively, do not leave this life without mastering yourself. Remember, Christ had to master himself because he had to will himself over the will to live when he could have been like, I'm out of here, dudes.
Yeah.
Right? He was man. He was flesh, right? He had to go through the experience to show that it could be done. Take like Giordano Van Bruno when they burned him at the stake. And he wrote the Popol Vuh and all this stuff. And he looks at them and he says, it's not I that is afraid. It's you that are afraid. And they set him on fire. He didn't move. He didn't move.
Unreal.
It's unreal, right? And that's self-mastery because we are ruled by the self, desire, passion, rage, anger, hate, love, sexual perversions, pornography, every single thing, alcohol, booze, like, so everything that's happening caters to these physical things that then we think that body is us. We think that that's what we are. And if through self-mastery, practice and discipline, right? Like, and engaging really, truly and with the higher consciousness and learning to listen to what that is, you become impermeable to these things. You see them for what they are. You begin to master yourself. You do not think of pleasure or pain. You do what needs to be done. You don't care if everybody hates you. You don't care if everybody loves you. It's irrelevant. You are taking the infinite, that which cannot be seen, and bringing it into the finite, right? That takes a warrior. That takes a warrior. And I suggest we call all the warriors home. And everybody lays down the divides and the bitterness and the anger towards one another. And we think about like, hey, maybe we're the ones we've been waiting for. No one's coming to rescue us. All these ideas are, they're out of juice. They're out of steam. They're running out of steam right now, right? They're out of gas. So it's like, now is the time to birth the real warrior. And let me tell you something, it will cost you everything. It will cost you everything. But in the process of that, you will understand why you're here. For this short 80, 30,000 days, whatever you get, you will be able to look back and be like, I fulfilled my destiny, right? And it wasn't in a Ferrari, and it wasn't in a cash amount, it wasn't in a follower count. Like, I did something great, right? And maybe they do set you on fire. Like William Wallace, his actions weren't realized until he died.
Yeah.
And, one of my favorite stories of all time is the story of Alexander the Great. And, he was similar to like Moses, who was in the house of Akhenaten. They came up through the mysteries. His mother was a mystic. Her father was King Philip. He was born and went through the mysteries. Now, the Eleusinian mysteries were 2,000 years, and it was a ritual. And there's some known about it, but nobody knows actually what really happened because, of course, Plato went through it and came out and said, I've been reborn. And, of course, we have the Kritas and all the things that he did. And people didn't do it because if you didn't make it through, they killed you. So like when you entered into it and it happened and you went through this ritual, which was like 7 days long, underground, all these things, it's a pretty powerful force knowing that, like, it'd be like, hey, eat this cat shit. You're like, I'm not gonna eat this cat shit. They're like, we'll kill you. You're like, yeah, I'll have a bite. You know, like, right? Like, yeah, I'll take a snack. Yeah, whatever, little piece of cat shit. But but like, so he goes on, rises up, defeats Darius, Persia, summarized through his life, and he loses his way. And the whole point of the Aleutian Mysteries was nothing to do but self-mastery, right? Absolute self-mastery. Meaning, like, in the face of certain death, you are just as still as a post, only focused, right? Only feeling. The mind is not on, right? And so he comes out, defeats Darius, loses his way because they start draping him in gold. They start telling him he's a god and all these kind of things. He starts having these orgies and all this crazy shit, and he's getting drunk all the time. And then he's in a temple. He's in Persia. And his best friend calls him out, and he's like, dude, you're totally fucked up. Like, you're not a god, you're a man. And in a fit of drunken rage, he grabs the spear from the sentry and kills him, he had grown up with him his whole life. Alexander, in the emotional rage, sees what he'd done and runs and hides in his tent for 4 days, starves himself. All the mystics and the magi, they come, the Sufis, and they're trying to say, hey, it's okay, you know, whatever. He comes out, he says, we're going home, Macedon, via way the great river. And they enter into India because, of course, the Indian Ocean is over there, if you know your geography. And he runs into a man who has 15,000 war elephants, and a battle ensues, and he easily defeats him with horses. And the man immediately capitulates, and he's a Vedic. You can learn all about who they were. But the oldest culture, basically, religious culture in the world, deeply spiritual guy. So Alexander wants to meet him. He meets him and he tells him, hey, I know a guy that can talk to the trees. And talking to the trees meant like writing on wood, because they didn't have paper. So they would write on wood and they would say the trees would talk, as a loose translation. And he says, yeah, I know a man. So they go into what is modern day Tibet. He leaves his whole army, goes on this sojourn, apparently climbs into a monastery there. Remember, the monks weren't really discovered until they were basically exterminated during the Chinese Cultural Revolution. They were living in obscurity up there and maintaining all these ancient texts and all this kind of stuff up there. He gets up there, there's a guy sitting in there. And I'll summarize the story. He's sitting in there, and the guy says to him, why hath thou come here, Alexander? And he says, how do you know me? And he says, I've known you before the cosmic dust was formed on this plane. And he says, but you've come to talk to the trees. Now, we don't really know what happened, but he says to him, Alexander, you will be killed by the poison cup within 1 year. And the first thing he says is really insightful, because he was in an ego state. He says, who will give me the poison cup? Oh, Bob, right there, alter history. Yeah, right? No, he says nothing. And he says, why will I be given the poison cup? And he says, because you've gone on to conquer the known world, you have failed to conquer your own self, and so your life will be taken from you.
Mountain Tough is the fitness app trusted by the dedicated. Mountain Tough ethos is backed by, we've always wanted to be the best in the world at helping our customers become more mentally tough. So inside the Mountain Tough app, you're not only going to find all of our physical training programs, but you're going to find additional training as well, so that you can stay sharp physically, mentally, spiritually, and nutritionally. The Mountain Tough app also allows you to train no matter where you are, anytime, anywhere. Additionally, the Mountain Tough app is going to have programs from beginners all the way up to elite athletes. And all of our programming is structured in a way that you can start with no gear at body weight, and you can go all the way up to programming that is full gear. So you can do that in a robust home gym or your local gym. There's no excuse for you not to start today. With Mountain Tough, you can conquer your goals with the ideal program for your lifestyle and schedule. Train with equipment or just your body weight on your phone, tablet, TV, or web browser. Most importantly, Mountain Tough will help you train your mindset so you are always ready for anything life throws your way. Mountain Tough is offering the Mountain Tough Podcast listeners an incredible offer. 6 weeks free on the Mountain Tough app. All you need to do is use the code MTNPOD to redeem your 6 weeks of training. That'll be a 14-day free trial plus a whole additional 4 weeks of training. Just go to mountaintough.com and enter code MTNPOD for your 6 weeks free on the best-in-class physical and mental training app.
Now, the interesting thing is nobody can tell the future because the future is a concept. What happened to Alexander was that he became hyper paranoid about who was going to poison him. So what the sage did was killed him with a thought.
With that one thought.
He shot a thought arrow into his head. And for that to stick, he had to have belief that this dude knew something. He had to climb a mountain. He had to have rapport, like the psychologist in the white lab coat that diagnoses you with a thought.
Rapport.
Right? And you have this rapport. So then what's he do? Well, you know, there's all kinds of different stories about that, but he went crazy. He started thinking everybody was who's going to poison me? Who's going to poison me? And what's he start putting in the consciousness? You know what? This dude's an asshole. Poison him. And he died at 33. Right? So
that's crazy.
Right. So what killed him was a thought.
Yeah.
And that's what is killing humanity is these thoughts and these ideas that are generated, right, to keep you from realizing what you are.
Or the fear of the future.
Which is crazy because the future is a concept. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
20 minutes from now doesn't exist. What's real is what's right here.
Yeah.
The workout today, you know, is only a memory. Like even to recall it, right? It would be slightly different.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I did this, and then the air died, and it's a memory, right? So I believe what people have to do is wake up to this very fact and think about what is controlling my life. Why am I in the situation I'm in? And that I'm the answer to getting out of it. And to do that, it starts with the beginning portions of mastering yourself, right? Like your relationship to food, how you utilize technology, you know, what you allow into your mind, what you eat, what you drink, the company that you keep, the people that you're around, what you stand for, what are your values, what are your ethics, what do you think about yourself, what do you think about others, and what do you think life ultimately is all about, right? And you begin to ask these fundamental questions in such a way that it transforms your life. Like you have to have a daily practice in engaging with you. If the first thing you do is wake up out of bed and look at your cell phone, let me tell you something, you are very, very wrong. The whole world has just entered into your bedroom. The whole world, right? You wake up and it's a cat smoking a cigarette, playing the piano that Bob sent you, right?
Yeah.
The thing is what you should be doing in those hours is learning how to breathe, learning how to still your mind, and learning how to listen, right? Learning how to set up parameters, and then these tools don't rule you, you rule them. And that's, you know, what it means to be a king, right? You're the king of your life.
Not a
right?
slave.
Not a slave. And we have enough slaves. And I think, like, you know, for my, you know, for the military community, I really like, you know, my hope and prayer would be that like we could come together and the people that are the real warriors, like, began to like seek inside themselves and think about, what are we doing for the next generation? Like, what are we leaving behind for them, for our children, for our children's children? This will be our legacy of this epoch, this generation, our generation. What have we done? We have no one to blame. You have hands and you have feet and you have your breath and you have ability, right? But if you haven't mastered fear and attachment, then that's where you're at. And that happens through the ritual. And that's why ritual has been robbed from humanity. Ritual, we have a ritual called the Fire and Ice in the program. And it is an extremely powerful experience for guys. Because
What's Fire and Ice?
Fire and Ice is it's a night ritual that involves interpersonal conflict, extreme cold, heat, sound, stones, fighting, long duration, and it pushes people to their absolute maximum limits. And just when you think you absolutely can't take it no more, now you have to fight. And you find out in that moment what is really inside of you. Because most people, I've come to find, have never learned to fight for themselves. They fought for units, they fought for ideas, for political ideologies, for countries. But when it's back to the man with the stick in the field, the one that has spiritually prepared himself, trusting in the unfolding of his life, is a hard man to kill. He is extremely, because he already realizes that he's already dead. He already sees it. He's not holding on to anything. The other guy that's like, oh, this is going to be nuts, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you're watching this happen. Like, well, I mean, you look back throughout all of history, like you think about Morimoto, right? Like, we know all these things, all the information is there, but nobody ever actually does anything with it. And he realized that the way to total sword mastery, winning his first duel at 13 years old, was through balancing his emotions. And so Morimoto, ages, of course, and starts to dedicate his life to philosophy. And there's a new samurai who is a much quicker, much smarter, and is at a high level fighter. And they knew that this was going to come to like a kind of a confluence, right? This is going to come to a crash. So Morimoto invites him to fight to the death at an island. Well, the guy gets to the island, Ajin, I think was his name, and he's waiting for him. And Morimoto shows up 3 hours late. And the sun's at his back, and he gets into the water, and this dude's pissed. He's been standing around for 3 hours, and he's only holding an oar. And this guy's enraged, and he says to him, "You've already lost."
Emotions.
And the guy runs into the ocean after him with his sword and swings at him and misses because the sun's beaming down into his face. Morimoto moves slightly and hits him with the oar and kills him.
Mastery,
right?
Yeah.
Like you could never pull that off, right? Like you could never pull that off if you were not completely the master of your emotions, because emotions are incredible things, but they're the worst leaders.
Yeah.
And I've been periods in my life where I've been led by my emotions. It's super easy to do, and they're necessary because they come out, and then you get to see what they are, and that gives you something to work on, So I think like we are in a hyper emotional state as a species where everything is like addicted to emotion, just the stuff, the things, like, the inspirational of whatever, even if it's good content, right? It's all about feeding these emotional feelings, and you have no mastery out of them. You might as well be a ship with no sail and no rudder in the Drake Gap.
Just getting pushed around.
You're toast.
Yeah.
You're toast. Anybody can come over and be like, nice dress. oh my God, right? Like you're ruined, right?
Yeah.
Like I love this, but now I hate it.
Man. So the focus of your programs now, and you've evolved year after year after year, but it sounds like on the 41 day, the big thesis, the big focus now is mastering yourself.
Yeah.
Through a lot of different modalities.
Horses, mountains, raw environmental challenges, fasting, nutrition, living absolutely with nothing in excess, simplicity, having the willingness to deconstruct yourself, through all kinds of processes. And the processes, it's like people like, with the cold plunge. I'm doing cold plunges for a really long time. And now it's like a thing, right? Like where it's like, it's a thing where you have to film yourself doing it. And I laugh because the purpose of the cold plunge isn't, and it's actually cold therapy, but like the shout out to Brian and Alicia, but the purpose of it has nothing to do with the actual cold plunge, but we think it is. What it has to really do is like the 5 minutes leading up to it.
That's going to suck.
But when you can be in an absolute place where, and this is what we teach the guys, because they live in the cold and it's cold and it's outdoor showers and it's cold plunges or cold therapy. And it's like, they don't see any hot water in the thing, right? The initial thing that you have is to resist it. You immediately associate it with a negative feeling and you just see everybody clamp up and just tough it out, right? But when you settle into your breath and you actually feel it, you get so still where you actually feel what it is. And you just look at it as another experience. It's not negative, right? It's not bad, right? It's a new experience. And so you sit in there and you, all of a sudden it like becomes like a part of you, and it becomes a very spiritual place where you're sitting in there and you're so comfortable in the uncomfortable because now you're not naming this as a thing.
You're present.
You're present in this experience, and you're in like such a state of relaxation where the cold is no longer assaulting you. You're one with it, right? It's kind of like, in my journey throughout my life of freediving, where you get to this point where I really, especially after like this past 2 months straight of free diving, getting to a 5-minute breath hold, right? And being in this place where all of a sudden, like, you are one with every water molecule around you, every fish moving, every shark going by, like, you're no longer like, oh no, like this and that, like
Flow state.
Yeah, flow state of it, right? And if we could just find whatever the medium is for you, for the individual, that puts you into the flow state. And we have to try to stay there, not just like in the cold plunge, but like, in the boardroom or in my daily life, or, when you come home and your wife burned your eggs or whatever, right? You are in a state realizing, right, that each one of these experiences in your life is a teacher. So like, if somebody is being a total asshole to you, you should like think to yourself, I should be paying this person
For the learning.
Like, you should feel guilty because they deserve $1,000, right? My old boxing coach, Martin Snow, shout out to Trinity Boxing. He always says, like, Micah, they always tell you, choose A or B. He's like, choose C. The game's rigged. Always choose C. And, that's what I hope for, like, our people. There's so many talking heads. There's so many people out there. They have so many things. And it's like, the question we got to get to is like, what are you doing? What does tomorrow look like? What does the end of this like podcast look like? Like, what am I going to implement in my life? And I don't think that's for anyone to determine, but the individual. Maybe that's like every single day for 1,000 days, you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you walk in nature for 1 hour.
Game changer.
game changer. No cell phone in the dark, whatever. Snow, rain, cold, it doesn't matter. You make it will just a walk.
Will change your life.
Absolutely. And then that becomes infectious. And then all of a sudden when the cheesy poofs roll out, you're like, your emotional relationship to what that is, because you are in a state of honoring your body. But then you should never judge another person for sticking their hand in the bowl, because that's not your experience. It's theirs. And leaders, the hardest thing for me, like over all of these years of my own healing journey and creating this organization and where it is today and all the pitfalls and all the things, to come to the realization is that leaders set examples. And that is the only form of communication that you need. You don't need to tell anybody anything. You don't need to say anything. What it is it's you transforming yourself into the thing that you want to see in the world, and you become it. If you want to see unconditional love in the world, well, then you better set down the suitcases of conditions. If you want to see strength in the world, you must be a strong person. There is no other way but to transform. That's what it means to be born again. If all of a sudden you walked out of here and you just were like, unconditional love is like, that's what I am, everybody would kind of be like, wow, like,
That's a different dude.
it's a different dude.
Yeah.
You've been reborn, right? And so I suggest that every single day we become reborn, and we further and further and further transform ourselves into that which we see in the world. Because I'm done with the negativity. I'm done with the thinking that someone's going to save us. Like, they're going to come and it's going to be this leader and this guy, and he's got the biggest micro. Conor McGregor is going to be the president, right? like this is insanity. And so I think that, like, if we look at each other as all connected, and you look at that person in the grocery store that maybe, they're buying the Gino's pizza rolls and they're 300 pounds and they're there, you just love that person and you don't judge them. And that's not for them. That's for you. And you begin to see, like, the human condition and have compassion for it. And so when you see the kid fall down in the park, you go over and you pick him up, and you don't tell him all this shit we're talking about. You brush your kneecap off. You say, hey, be careful on your bike, right? The world needs warriors, right? That's courage. You see an injustice, you stand up for it. It doesn't really matter what it costs you, right? And that, being a leader and setting that example, was something that, I was like sitting in Indonesia on the beach. I went for a run. I'm totally disconnected from the world, like insanely disconnected from the world. Matter of fact, I don't know if you can get much farther than where we were. And I went for this run, and I sat down and I was watching the sun come up, and the waves were kind of booming, and man, I started like just sobbing. And I was like, fuck, I've lost the thread. Like, I lost the thread. Like, in my own life, like, yeah, I'm doing lots of good things and positive things and doing stuff. But the thing is it's like, wasn't a full transformation, right? Like, because when you do, that fear comes in because of the life shift that begins to happen. Friends change, not because you have any disagreement or anything like this, but because you're not sitting around, pounding the whiskeys or telling the stories or like doing the things, and you're like focusing on all this other stuff, and people and some come with, and they see the leadership in your own life, and others go away, and that's okay. Because I came to the realization, like, in my life, that for something new to come, something old always has to depart.
Yeah.
And we want to hold on to the old. And I was it really crushed me. Like, and I looked at all of these like little inconsistencies and contradictions in my life sitting there. There was no spiritual music. There was no, Nobody was doing anything. I was alone, sitting there at this, like, on this planet with this, like, sun rising. And I realized that it was me. And so I stood up, and right there in that moment, I said, the first step that I take is the first step that I take.
Starting over
It's
again.
right there, starting over again. And that's what is available to humanity, is being like, I can do something. I'm not a victim of this thing. I don't need these leaders and ideas and things. I know what I need to do for my family. I know what I need in my home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you want all this stuff, but you have to become it. You have to transform yourself into the thing.
You don't have to wait for someone. You
No.
don't have to wait for someone to tell you. And then it is like a full surrender almost. And a partial surrender is kind of where you feel like you lose that thread, where it wasn't all in, it was like 90% in or 80-20. But if you're still holding on to a chunk of that mask or a part of that mask, then no one can ever know the real you, because you're still having a little bit of that mask on, even if 90% of your masks have been removed.
Mm-hmm.
For someone to know the real you, like, they all have to come off.
Yeah, it's like Bruce Lee says, honestly expressing yourself. And that's what he would sum his philosophy up to. And there's a great conversation that he had where he, we're so into the technique of how to get this stuff done, right? The technique.
Mm-hmm.
And his Sifu says to him, what is the highest technique you can achieve in martial arts? And we're like, oh, black belt or whatever. And he says, no, to have no technique, right? So you need the technique so that you then have no technique. And when it hits by itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we were talking early on about kind of like, sword fighting and shields, right? Where the guy's not like block left, block right, block this. The technique has now been mastered.
Yeah.
And so when you can master one thing in your life, self-mastery of one thing, you now have the blueprint on how to master every single thing that comes in your way, right? So like pick one thing and master it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then I also believe in the power of aloneness. I deeply believe in this because we are often with people and they're pushing us and they're driving us and we're there. And it's like, I believe that, of course, you need helpers and allies and friends and all those things along the way. But like within your path of transformation, you must go at it alone, right? Like there is a very, feeling, and for all the type of men we are and things, 7 days alone in the backcountry with your tent, your mind can begin to play on you when you're like, hear the tree branches cracking at 3:00 in the morning and you're just alone in the most remote place and you got your 44 bag and you're sticking it out of the tent. And you're like, why is my heart racing so hard? Right. Like,
Yeah.
right. And only to find out that it's like a deer.
Yeah.
Right. And you kind of like laugh. Well, to the point where like, that doesn't happen anymore. It doesn't happen anymore. You're neutral, right? You're there. You're sensing, you're feeling. You're like, that's a deer,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not a grizzly bear like munching grass next to my tent, right? Like those are all things within your mind. And that's what I mean, like go at it alone. It's like do things that nobody can see but you, right? Get inside that operating system and begin to get excited about knowing yourself. Like I just, for me, it's so exciting. Like to keep uncovering and discovering and like you said, peeling off little pieces of the mask,
Mm-hmm.
little things that, you're embarrassed of or you think people are going to judge you or whatever. But when you integrate all those things, it's like it's like Morimoto, right? Like when you integrate all of those things, it doesn't really matter what people think about you. It's irrelevant. You don't even think of this.
It's irrelevant.
It's totally irrelevant, right? And then when you're like, for you, you're like drawing the bow back, right? It's just a thing that happens, right? And it hits by itself. You're in that moment. You're feeling the smell. All of a sudden, you can see the trees. You can see the moment happening. You're not anxious, right? You're not thinking they're going to go. You're not thinking any of these things.
Heart rate's not raging.
No, you're calm and you're there and it happens, right? That is mastery. My buddy yesterday, I saw him. I was like, he's a great friend of mine. He's never used a computer in his life. And he has a flip phone and he'll never hear this. Love you, buddy. And he's a timber frame builder. And he's worked with wood his whole life. And so yesterday I was like running home and he was coming by where I lived and he's like, hey, can I show you my house I've been building? And he's a really close friend of mine. And I was like, okay. So like, I was like, call my wife and she's like, yeah, sure. So I like drove all the way out in the middle of nowhere with him and he has this amazing like timber frame structure. I mean, he's all hand chiseled, right? Complex joints. And we're sitting there and he's like, get out and take a picture with your phone. And I was like, okay. So like I get out and I take some pictures of the joints and I got back in and we're just staring at this. And I said, you learn from wood. And he was like, what? And, older guy. And he's like, he looks at me and I said, your delivery system in this life is wood. Mm-hmm. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, have you ever gotten angry at that wood? He's like, oh, fuck yeah. I said, did you ever curse it? He's like, oh yeah. I said, okay. I said, did it teach you mathematics? He's like, oh yeah. I said, did it teach you geometry? He's like, yeah. I'm like, did it teach you engineering? He was like, yeah. I was like, did it teach you patience? He's like, yeah. I'm like, did it teach you love? He's like, yeah. And I said, wood is the delivery system.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, when you think about it like that. So each person has to find, and I'm not saying my way or your way or anybody else's way. Each person has to find what that delivery system is for them, right? And they have to master that. Mm-hmm. And then your relationships and everything else in your life through that dedication to mastery spills over and you transform.
How are you seeing the guys that go through the 41-day program have a big transformation? They're doing well. And then they're back in their apartment that next week, Houston, Texas, back in the hustle. How are those guys doing?
Yeah, so I actually had a call on the way here this morning, which was funny, which was about data. And when they leave Heroes and Horses, they know. Number one, they know. They have gained enough insight through all of the things into the workings of their own life and their own mind. They know. Now, what I find is like, it's some guys, like the trainer course we just had, 5 days of real intensity. Let me tell you something. These guys that were selected, knowing them as students and seeing them now as warriors, like transforming themselves was very moving for me to see them. I was like, I could throw anything at these men. Anything. They're not going to succumb to it. It doesn't matter what it is. It's not going to happen. They have stayed that path, right? Some guys get home, right? And we just launched a spouse support program. So the wives are going to go through kind of like a mini version when the husband goes home, so that there's that shared experience. Because some guys go home and initially start ripping the cabinets apart and get rid of the hamburger helper or whatever. And that's not positive either, right?
They need a shared language.
They need a shared language. Some guys go back and fall, 2 days later, fall in the trough, catch up with the buddies, they're back, and puke on the side of the road and wake up and hate themselves and realize, oh, that's what that's like. And a person's life is, I came to realize, like, I'm not in control of people's change. We set up the container and the experience and provide the things there that then they have to walk through, the ceremony. Now, what they choose to do with that is proprietary to the individual. But there is nothing that I know of that is more comprehensive and soul revealing than that experience. But the body and the mind and all these things are very powerful forces when you get into an old environment. Mm-hmm. So what I see is, like, sometimes like I had a guy who went back, and he really didn't, it was 3 months later where all of a sudden he got it. Like, he got it, and his life transformed, and he is an incredible man today. But I was, like, thinking, like, oh man, like, did I, like, fail this guy? Like, he went back and kind of did okay, and then just kind of spiraled, right?
Took a little while.
It took a while. So, like, that timing is, like, I actually wrote a post today, which I actually don't manage it or anything, but I'll occasionally, if I have a thought. And I was thinking, like, about patience and really realizing, like, so many of the challenges in my life come from impatience. Ultimately, I want to handle a situation. Like, I'm an action guy. Like, here's the thing, I'm going to handle it. Like, whatever now, right? And then coming to really see that, like, a person that is deeply, deeply patient, deeply become capable of anything. Capable of anything. And you could take, like, a kind of like a Taoist take, which would be like, nature is never in a hurry, but always gets everything done, right? And so I realized, like, man, there's a lot of, like, impatient in my life.
That's a hard one.
Like, even with children, right, where you see them and there's, whatever, kid drama and all those kind of things, and you're telling them this stuff and you're all the things, and it's not happening, and you're like, you kind of get frustrated, and you're thinking, like, maybe I need more of this, more information. I got, like, and you realize, like, you be the example and you be deeply patient.
Hey guys, I did want to interrupt for a quick minute right here and let you know about some supplements I've been taking. I did shy away from supplements for a long time. I was always cautious about what they were made out of, where they were from, and who the team was behind the brands. But over the last couple of years, I've got to meet the team at Mountain Ops from top to bottom, and they are an amazing group of humans. I've got to know the CEO, Trevor Farnes, really well, and he is a mission-focused individual that cares about humans living a better quality of life so that they can have that abundant life. So over the last couple of years, he has helped me add some things that have changed the game for me. One of those things that I've added is creatine from Mountain Ops. It helps me maintain some muscle mass, but also it's a big, big player in cognitive function, one of the most researched supplements out there. Also, I've added reds, greens, and protein, all from Mountain Ops. What I found as a busy professional, always on the run, I do eat a whole foods diet for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but on the go, it's hard to get enough vegetables, fruits, and protein. So I've added that from Mountain Ops, and it has significantly changed the game. I can feel it in my performance. I haven't got sick for a long, long time, and I can certainly feel it in my mental clarity as well. The last thing I've added is the Mountain Tough Hydrate product for the backcountry, for hunting season. When I'm in the hills, I do run short on those electrolytes. We even have a Mountain Tough flavor, the Mountain Tough Lemon Lime Hydrate, and that is a game changer for hydration in the backcountry. So I keep it really simple. That is all I've added to my protocol, and it has certainly helped me, and I certainly believe in the team and the culture behind Mountain Ops. They have started an initiative that's been around for a while called Conquer Hunger. Conquer Hunger is giving meals to hungry kids that aren't getting enough food, and they've given out over 6 million meals plus to kids through their Conquer Hunger initiative. So every order that happens at Mountain Ops a percentage of that order goes to Conquer Hunger. So certainly an incredible company, an incredible culture. As a listener to the show, you do get an exclusive offer to Mountain Ops, so make sure you check that out. The offer is incredible as a first-time purchase at MountainOps.com. So build your order if it's your first time. They are offering you a 20% exclusive discount. All you need to do is enter the promo code MountainTOUGH, all one word, all caps, for 20% off your first order at MountainOps.com.
Deeply patient, never forcing the river, right? You can't push a river. And so you begin to sit back and like, whew, we now have the ability to react. We send an email, boom. Like, I mean, back in the day, I used to send these emails off and then I would freak out because I'd try to get them back, right? And I'd be like 2 a.m. and that's what I think, enter. And I'm like, how do you get an email back? It's like, oh no, like, right. And so, and I laugh because these devices and all of the access and the hyper connectivity and the hyper complexification and the hyper sharing of information allows us to react instantaneously. And it's no different than that, that mind bullet that was shot in Alexander's head. And we can really hurt someone. We can really set someone off a course. We can really create all kinds of necessary consequences
with words.
With words. And we can build somebody up. We can tear them down. And back to what I was originally saying was that there's just no wrong turns. You made that decision. Well, guess what? You're getting ready to witness yourself. And whatever comes next, when you fired the thing or said the stuff or nuked the relationship, that's for you.
Consequences.
And you move through them, and you're like, you move through them with humility and with grace, and you let them play out, and you learn from that, and the consequence will be the consequence. And you can't mitigate these consequences, and that's another big problem. Everybody wants to mitigate consequences, but consequences have trillions of not even quantifiable possibilities, right? Like just as simple as like going in the grocery store and just telling the lady like, hey, I really like your shoes. That lady might have been, I went to a rodeo a couple years ago, and they had no, I was supposed to have a hotel room. No hotel room. I'm in the middle of the season. I'm freaking exhausted. You know, we're up every day, 4:30, doing all this stuff, new classes, no days off, all this stuff. We could do this rodeo. They're going to do this fundraiser. Oh, man. So I'm like, I drive up there. It's like 8 hours. It's here in Montana. It takes me forever. Or Idaho, excuse me. Or Montana, I'm not going to say because I'm going to shame the rodeo. But like, I get up there and they're like, oh, there's like no rooms. And I'm like, okay. So they put me in this maintenance closet with a bed, no air conditioning, no windows, 100 degrees. I'm in there sweltering. I go down to the river. I bathe in the river. And I'm talking that next morning. And so I spend the morning just no tech, walking along the river and bathed and washed and kind of like hung out and whatever. I don't care.
Yeah.
So I get to the event. I've got the little Heroes and Horses video showed up, and I'm going to share about like what we do. And there's maybe 300 people in there. Everybody's hammered. Okay. They got sponsored by Pendleton. Everyone's sitting there. Country music's going. People are smoking, right? And they're drinking the things. And here I am, like
just morning drinking.
The rodeo season's on, right? Everyone's hammered, right? And I get up there and the TV doesn't work. And the lady tries like holding the microphone to the TV, and it's like, and it's like, and the horses, and everyone's like standing there like smoking, like looking at me, right? So I kind of like go into whatever I'm gonna say, and I'm like trying to share like the deeper meaning behind what we want to do as an organization, and it's like people are just staring at me. I'm like, we gotta work on ourselves, like we gotta like do some push-ups, you know? Like we're over there, and people are like. They're just sitting there looking at me.
Yeah.
A couple people come up to me and it's like, my aunt has a couple horses. My uncle's a vet. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I talk to all the people and stuff, right? I go back to my freaking maintenance closet and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? Right? I was like, I'm so tired. I haven't seen my family. I'm in this sweat box. There's no windows. There's no bathroom. Okay. There's no bathroom. So I'm like, I got to go to the bathroom, eating that health food shit. So I'm like, no place to go, right? I'm going over to the McDonald's, right? and I'm like, so the next evening, I'm there for the evening, which was like this veterans ride. So they have all the vets in a wagon. And it's all the vets dressed up in the vet clothes. And with the hats and the stuff, and everybody's wasted.
Oh, man.
And they got the beers, and they get in there like, all right, you're going to go around. We're going to introduce heroes and horses, and we're going to salute the vets. And I looked at the guy, and I said, I'm not getting in that wagon. And he's like, I said, I'm not getting in that wagon. I'm not doing it. And he goes, you want a horse? I said, give me a horse. I said, but I'm not getting in that wagon. That ain't me, right? So he's like, okay. So he goes over and he gets the pickup man's horse, right? Which is this huge like Percheron cross thing. So we're supposed to the wagon's supposed to go around, and when I'm supposed to ride behind him, we're supposed to wave, basically, right? And the music, patriotic music comes out. Everyone's there. Everyone's screaming and yelling. Our nation's veterans. These dudes are in the bag, okay? They're being pulled by a team. They open the gate up. And this horse that I'm on, he just fucking takes off. Like,
he's ready to
rears
go.
up and goes. I run right by the wagon, and I'm at a dead run in the middle of the arena. So I kind of skirt to the outside, and I'm like, well, whatever. I take my hat off. I'm like waving at the crowd. And so they're like, they say kind of changed up the script a little. They're like, heroes and horses, right? Like they're going there, and these dudes are in the wagon. They're like looking at me, and I'm like, I still can't slow the horse down. So he comes around, and I'm like, the hot lap past the wagon again, right? And the dudes all the other guys are like looking at me. Horse goes around, comes back. It was actually kind of cool. So I come back. I was like, my heart's pounding. I'm like, this freaking horse. He's like, sorry, man. He's just kind of used to the gate opening or whatever. I'm like, yeah, whatever. So I give him the horse back, and I'm like, all right, time to go home. I'll drive all through the night. I need to get back, see my family. And I'm standing in the back of the corrals, and I'm thinking what am I doing? Why am I
up here?
Why am I up here, right? And then as I'm getting ready to leave, this big guy, farmer, overalls on, he comes walking up to me. He goes, are you Micah? I said, fuck, here we go. I was like, yeah. He's like, you spoke today, huh? And I said, yeah. And he goes, I was going to kill myself tonight. I was going to commit suicide. He said, I can't pay for all my farm equipment. I'm going bankrupt. The bank's going to take everything that I have. He's like, I'm in deep debt. We haven't had a good grow. And he's like telling me all this stuff. And he said, so I made the decision that I would just kill myself for my family.
Mm.
And dude, I sat there, and he said, after I heard what you said, he's like, I want to live. He's like, I want to live. And I reached up this big Copenhagen farmer guy, and I hugged him as hard as I could, and I just put my hand on his face. I'm like, life is worth living. And I was had this beautiful conversation with him, and then I got in the truck and I drove back, right? And it was
that's why you were there, man.
That's the only reason
you were there,
why I went there.
Yeah.
And it was nothing more than that.
Yeah.
And I've never even shared that story with anybody, because I just started laughing. I started laughing at my own mind, right? Where it's I'm okay, no wrong turns. We got to do this, all the things. And here I am, and I'm like, son of a bitch. I'm shitting in the McDonald's. It was it sucked, right? And I was just miserable. And I started laughing, and I just had so much gratitude. And I thought if even my whole entire life I did that, and then I got hit by a semi on the way home, I've done my duty, right? I've done what needed to be done, and And I was a part of helping a person that was completely at their wit's end. And who knows what they were doing or praying or whatever. Like, who knows what the situation was. And I think that's like, if we can have that level of insight where we stop and we think like, maybe I'm not supposed to be at work. This person needs me now. And work will still be there. You know, all of these other things are going to be there, and see the signs and the symbols in the present moment. You know, that's when our life starts to take what they would call purpose. Mm-hmm. And people always say like, you know, purpose. I don't know the purpose fucking thing. Like I can't, it's the purpose, my purpose. It's like, listen, realize that your life is your purpose. You already have it. So if you're always looking for something else, then here will never be good enough.
The present.
It's here. Your life is your purpose. You got it. Mm-hmm. You got it. You're sitting in your car. You got it. You got your purpose. Your life is your purpose. And so you start to realize like my purpose is to live my life, to follow my heart. That is my purpose. It's not some grand, and yeah, maybe you rise to the heights and whatever. Maybe you climb the tower, do the thing. Maybe you don't. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're just really good to the people on your block.
And you follow your heart.
And your life is your purpose. It was given to us. It's here, right? It's an unfolding. So we often think that like, oh, it's not good enough because we want to see like someone's purpose is higher than our purpose because they have a big, you know, microphone and they're yelling at everybody to march, mm-hmm. right? Like, no, maybe, but more often than not, like your purpose might be not about you. It might be because your son is the one.
It's not about us.
No, maybe your whole job in your life is to master all the things we're talking about so that your son can rise up and become what the world needs. And you may never see it. Mm-hmm. Your job was to just be the teacher.
Yeah.
And that's enough.
Mm-hmm. Man, I love it.
Yeah, dude.
It's powerful. And it's so needed right now. I mean, there are a lot of men listening. There's a lot of men listening that we see all the time that are scared to do the things they know they're supposed to do. They're scared to quit the job they've hated for 10 years, or they're scared to apologize to their wife, and it's causing very negative consequences. And it's causing the symptoms that we see skyrocketing all over the board. But I think deep inside of us, we all know, and us who've experienced it know for sure that following your heart is the way to go.
Listen, dudes, listen, this is the worst thing ever, but I'm going to tell you the answer. It's called the truth. And, oh man, shout out, like, the most liberating thing in my life was all of the things that I kept to myself, to be radically honest with the people in your life, with your spouse, with your job, with what you're doing, with where you're at. Radical honesty. And people say, well, like, what's the truth? Well, in the most basic sense, the truth would be whatever has happened and whatever is happening now is the truth. So if it did happen and it is happening now, it's the truth. And when you know the truth, it will set you free. And the most liberating thing for me and biggest growth point from spending time in the Andes with, medicine men and going down the Amazon and soloing through there and all of these things and the vision quests and all these kind of different things in my life. The message was always the same. Tell the truth. Right? Yeah. like tell the truth. There's enough, whatever it is, speak the truth, you know, and that happens in the most intimate relationships in your life first, where you're like, the consequence is the consequence. It's either the frying pan or the hug, but you do it and you're free. And you're free.
Yeah.
And the chains come off and you're free.
It's in the light.
It's in the light. That right there, I would say, out of all of the things, like looking in my life, is where you actually reclaim your power. See, when you're occulting things or hiding from view, right? That's really what that word means. Somebody then can take something from you because you are in a vulnerable position. So then you have to like deeply conceal, right? Like, and we all do that in so many aspects of our life, right? And when you can take that and put that out and release it, you now move into a position of power. You move into a powerful position. This is counter to what every single fucking thing in the world tells you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, but you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free from you. It's from you. You create a war inside, you know, and when you can release that, and the truth, you know, the thing is like, yeah, you hate that job. Then you walk in and you call bullshit on it because that's your heart. What are you going to do next week? Who knows? Take your kids skateboarding. You're not going to die. You're not going to not have, you know, bagels. Nothing's really going to happen. And then you sit there and be like, what are my passions? What do I love to do? Okay, I do that. And then you show up at the place and the boss is an asshole and you're like, well, this isn't it. But this guy's teaching me, so I'll hang around.
Keep trying.
You keep trying and you go, and it's like, it's not a playbook to the end. We have to get that out of our mind. The goal isn't like golfing in West Palm Beach with a Mercedes.
No.
I mean, it can be, but let me tell you something. Those people aren't happy, right? If they're not happy, you have a bunch of stuff, and we're all somehow strangely going towards this direction of, you know, retiring and having stuff.
It's a myth.
It's a myth, and it's a bad myth.
Yeah.
We have all these great myths, right? Like we could go and we can read in texts and libraries and the Smithsonian. We could learn all these things. But the some myth that we seem to follow is that like, be a good boy, get your legal degree, and die in Florida.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the goal.
Just a leathered piece of tan skin.
Just miserable because you're, you know, au gratin potatoes were overcooked.
Oh.
Can you believe? It must have a new chef. You know, so like my thing is like just be radically honest. And, you know, that's what we really talk about. The guys, that's one of our principles at Heroes and Horses. And man, I've heard some things every year. I'm like, I have heard it all. Like I actually felt like I had heard it all. But then like a guy comes along and I'm like, I have not heard it all. I just haven't heard it all, right? And I'm willing to be vulnerable and share like my story and the detail and then things and say, hey, look at like, there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's no playbook to life. It is you and it is your story. It's irrelevant what people think about it. It is your path. And so you own that. You own that battle space of your path and you live radically honest and you will be happy. You will absolutely be happy. It doesn't really matter. It's not wrong to have a bunch of stuff, right? And it's not wrong to not have a bunch of stuff. You know, it's like, what's the difference? You're miserable on a shitty couch or miserable on a nice couch? Yeah. Right? You have, someone's miserable in 300 thread count sheets and I'm miserable in my 50 thread count sheets. It doesn't really matter. It's like, well, I'm miserable with a better umbrella, right? So like, you know, we just like, if we can call people forward, and that's why like I love down in your gym, you mentioned the spiritual side, you know, and I was always like kind of like weird about talking about that, and I have all my own things in my life, because it's like, because of all the judgment associated with it. And, people are going to think you're this and you're that. And like, here's the thing. It is absolutely irrelevant what people think about you.
It is.
It just is not relevant. You are living your truth, and look at, people are coming to you. Your frequency is rising. People are coming, and it's like, yeah, they're training their bodies. They're also training their spirits. They're training their minds. They're like learning to like live in a different way and begin to master portions of their self. That scales out. Most people go to the gym so that they look a certain way. I mean, that's really the ultimate goal, is so that, I don't look like a fucking pear at the beach.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
But that's only one leg of the stool. It's the mind, body, spirit. You can't just have one strong and the other two weak, or that stool's falling over, especially if I put weight on that stool. And so it's the same thing you're doing. It's the same thing, that we are holistic beings, and so we must train holistically.
Yeah.
And if we don't, then I add weight. Maybe I add a financial crisis. Maybe I add a marriage crisis, and that stool is going to come down. And so it's the holistic nature of it. People need to understand that they're all connected. They're all interconnected. And we think what other people think and what other people feel about us is so massive, and we shape our lives around what we think they're thinking when they're not even thinking that. Where there's like studies where 90% of humans, 90% of Americans, they don't know their great-greats' first names. So you might know your great-grandfather and your great-grandmother's first name, but 90% don't know the great-greats. And you're like, well, they were living a life just like we were, and they thought their life was so important. But we, as their ancestors, we don't even know their first names. Yeah. And so it's about just living your life, and your life is your purpose.
Yeah.
But it is so connected to your heart and your intuition. And if you're not listening to that, you're going to have all the symptoms
consequences.
The consequences.
And the thing is like, if we can stop learning through consequences, it's like my wife, she's like, it's just like really coming to the realization where you're like, okay, I either continue learning through pain, or I just learn through awareness, because awareness comes first. Mm-hmm. It's always before the thing. Yeah, the awareness, like, this isn't good for me. I was like, what are you doing? You're like, no, I'm going to head home. Like, dude, like, your thing, right? Like, or you're like, I'll go, it's the guys, right? Like, whatever the situation is, there's always that split moment where it's like, bing.
There's always a way out.
And you look and you're standing there and you're in the office and the guy's like, you shithead programmers, and you're sitting there and all of a sudden it's like, quit right now. This is like, and you're like, oh, and then the mind's like, well, Betty, and we had we were going to Atlantis, and like, or you just right there have the courage of your conviction. You just stand up and say, you know what? Fuck you, I quit. Mm-hmm. You walk out, right? And it's like, boom, life changed. And then you get better and better at doing that, or you stay there and get cardiac disease and hate everybody and get stressed out and live in cortisol soup, and you sit there at your computer until you're 50 and then you quit, right?
Consequences.
The consequences.
They're coming either way.
They're coming either way. So let's make new ones, and I think it's really comes down to the greatest message, which is just like love for one another. For all of our inconsistencies as people and failures and all the things, like, if we really can look at each person and not judge them, no judgment, right? And just love them and hold space for them. And if that person comes to you, then you don't tell them what to do, but you just serve as a reminder. And you support them.
Yeah.
That's it. And that to me is like where like every single person is just as important as the other. You know, every single person has value and has meaning. And even when you see them and they're downtrodden and beat down, like their life matters. Their life matters. And the more that you can begin to feel that interconnectedness of all things, that actually brings you into the closer to the thread of courage in your life. And you just start to realize, like, it's not my own. Like, I'm here to be the hands and the feet of something much greater than me.
Yeah, and we're not better than anyone. No one is.
No, I mean, definitely not. I mean, definitely not. And it's easy to do because we live in a society of like absolute abject judgment. And, we always say like at H&H is that like all judgment is self-judgment. See, because you judge people in the way in which you judge yourself, and it's a mirror reflection.
So true.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, like, I always laughed. I was like, I call myself like a professional trigger puller, but not in the military sense. Just in the sense that, like, it triggers people when you say stuff like that, right? But, like, what it is it's not actually the trigger. It's the wound that it activates inside of you. See, somebody may see something in you and be negative towards you because it's something that they hate in themselves. And that's a trigger. And so it fires it off, right? Like maybe they're a behavior or a thing, a word, like whatever it is. And then they blame you when it actually, the trigger's inside of them.
So wild.
Yeah, it's a wild thing. And then that's why when it's like, if somebody came up to me and said, you're just a fat Samoan biker or whatever, I would be like, whatever, dude. But if they're like, you're a 45-year-old washed up Navy SEAL, I'd be like, you son of a bitch, how dare you?
Yeah.
Right? Like because like when it activates, that is a beautiful thing because you're like, that's inside of me. Man, I have a prejudice, I have a judgment, I have an insecurity, I have a weakness, I have something that I'm hiding. I have I'm occluding something from my life, and we hate that person shows that to you, not knowing that that's what they're doing, right? But you see it within yourself. It's the mirror. And so, like, we got to keep those people around, right? Because then once the trigger doesn't go bang, well, then the whole relationship's different because the trigger doesn't go bang, right? So it's like, you're like, wow, but most of the time we just get rid of the person. Yeah. But the trigger's still there. And what do? You inadvertently run into the next jackass that does the same exact thing to you. And then you're like, people are assholes.
But we could see it as an opportunity because it is an opportunity because they're showing us what we need to work on inside our own selves.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Man, Micah, thanks for coming by today. That was a fun, awesome day. It's a pleasure to hang out with you, and I love everything that you're doing, and the life transformations are amazing, and it's really on brand, for what Mountain Tough's been preaching since the beginning, mind, body, spirit, and nature, and everything is aligned. You're doing it in a very intense, on-the-ground way, and it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity, and it really feels good to see you on your path and us on our path, and we really are, working to make the world a better place, like one by doing it to ourselves and then bringing lives along one at a time. I think that it's a really special thing. And stay true to your path, and we'll stay true to ours. And wild times are ahead, and brotherhood is real. Yeah, that type of friendship, that type of brotherhood is real. And I think the more that we can establish that culture amongst men and pull each other forward, and encourage each other, and empower each other, I believe that we can actually do something really great. So,
I do too.
Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
All right.
Wow, what an intense conversation with Micah. A lot to unpack in there. Remember, every episode we're looking for that golden nugget. What can we take away from these shows and apply to our lives tonight, today, tomorrow, right away, so that we have that practical approach, so that our mindset is changing, so that we are forging ourselves and transforming. The big golden nugget for me was the conversation around tech that we got into, and how we have to get into a position in our lives where we are not slaves to this technology. We are masters of our own life, and we are utilizing the technology how, when, and why we want to use it, but we're not a slave. I think about that a lot with how robust it is now and how it is everywhere, but we don't want to be slaves to this technology. We want to use it to serve us rather than the latter. Think about that. Think about the phones in your pockets, in your house, in your kids' hands, and around your family room, your dining room. What do we need to do as a Mountain Tough community to make sure that we have these things in control? Love you guys, and I'll catch you on the next episode.